Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our early review of the Nike Pegasus Premium. So the Pegasus Premium is an all-new addition to the Nike range. So the Pegasus Premium will sit at the top of the Pegasus line, above the Pegasus Plus, which is kind of a lightweight, responsive, all-rounder shoe that has a ZoomX midsole. And then the Pegasus 41 is the entry-level model, the classic Pegasus, which has a mix of ReactX and Air Zoom pods in its midsole. Now, if you remember all those foams, that's important because the Pegasus Premium uses all of them in its midsole, which has 3 layers. It's a very high stack shoe. It's the most expensive Pegasus shoe. It's the heaviest Pegasus shoe, and it's the shoe with the highest stack in the range. And all around, it's very, very interesting on paper, so excited to get out for a couple of runs in it so far. It's set to launch next year at the end of January. In the UK, it's going to cost £184.99. Not sure on the US price as yet. Nike gives the weight as 320 grams, which is kind of an average across the line. My UK size 9, which is US size 10, weighed in at 328 grams or 11.6 ounces. So a fair bit heavier than the Pegasus 41 and the Pegasus Plus because of this big stack height, which is 45 millimeters at the heel, 35 millimeters at the forefoot. So the kind of classic Pegasus 10 millimeter drop, but a higher heel height than we've seen before in the line. Obviously the main interest in the shoe is definitely much in the midsole, but looking at the other parts of the shoe, the upper is an engineered mesh. You've got a bit of padding around the tongue and heel. Actually, it's quite an interesting, almost duvet style tongue I found. It's quite soft and thick, but it's quite lightweight as well. And then you've got a fairly substantial heel counter and a lot of padding around the heel of the shoe. And then the outside, you've got pretty good rubber coverage aside from a long section down the middle of the shoe, which is a slight cutout that shows off the Air Zoom pod, but at the heel and forefoot of the shoe, you've got rubber in Nike's kind of typical waffle outsole pattern. And in the midsole, there are 3 layers to this. So the top layer is Nike's ZoomX foam. This is the bouncy PEBA foam that introduced on shoes like the Vaporfly and Alphafly racing shoes. It's now used in the Invincible and the Pegasus Plus as this kind of bouncy, lightweight, responsive foam. Then you have a full-length Air Zoom pod running through the shoe, which is the key innovation, I guess, with the Pegasus Premium. Nike's been using this Air Zoom technology in pod form across lots of shoes for several years. Like you see it in the Alphafly, the hidden within the Pegasus midsole as well, the Pegasus 41 that is. But now they've been able to form this continuous unit that runs the length of the shoe. That gives you that responsive feeling all the way from heel to forefoot. Also stabilizes what is quite a high stack of foam. Underneath that, you have some ReactX foam, which is the foam used in the Pegasus 41 and the Infinity RN4, perhaps to try and stabilize the back of the shoe a bit more and also give a bit more durability. It's quite a hard-wearing foam, ReactX. So Pegasus Premium was announced earlier this year. Very exciting looking shoe. I was very interested to get out and test it. I have tested the Pegasus 41 and the Pegasus Plus as well. Done a couple of runs in the Pegasus Premium. So let's dive into how I found it. First, we'll have a quick look at the fit, and there's not much to say here. It was all good in my normal running shoe size. I've got a UK 9 here, US 10. That's the size I've used across Nike's range. Ever since I've been testing Nike shoes, it's the same size I have across the Pegasus and the Pegasus Plus. And yeah, got a good amount of room in the forefoot. It's quite a tapered design, but that fits me quite well. I've got quite a narrow foot. I don't think it's an especially narrow shoe though. Good hold around the heel and midfoot on my runs so far. So yeah, no concerns with the fit. I would stick to your normal running shoe size with the Pegasus Premium. So far, I've done 2 hour-long runs in the Pegasus Premium. I've done both of them at fairly easy paces, the odd pick up here and there. The first one I did, I've got fairly fresh legs, so I was running a bit faster than the second one when it was a full recovery run on very heavy legs. And yeah, the shoe certainly has a very interesting ride. Like you do really feel the high stack and the combination of foams in the midsole in a way that is quite different to the Pegasus Plus and the Pegasus 41. So it feels very much like a shoe that is built for cruising and just bouncing you along. Like it doesn't feel like a super speedy shoe to me, and you can feel the weight if you try and pick up the pace, or when I was running uphill even at an easy pace, you start to feel the weight of the shoe a little bit. But if you are on the flat or on a downhill, you can get to a really nice rhythm, hitting that big stack of foam, getting a nice amount of spring off, and just really moving along quite nicely. And it feels fairly effortless at times, despite the fact it is quite a big shoe. So of the foams in the midsole, the one that I felt the most was definitely that Air Zoom unit, which adds a bit of firmness for sure, and stabilizes the ride. It doesn't feel like for a high stack shoe like this, doesn't feel like a very soft and squishy shoe to me. Like you're hitting that ZoomX, which does compress a fair bit, then you hit the Air Zoom pod, which gives you a lot of kind of bounce back and response, as we've seen it in other shoes like the Alphafly. Even when you hit the ZoomX into the pod, you then get that bounce back, and now that's running the full length of the shoe. You don't get a really soft feeling at the heel, but you do get moved quite smoothly onto the forefoot and get a fair bit of response from that Air Zoom unit. You do get a little bit of the noise you kind of expect from Nike shoes with Air Zoom pods in, and Nike shoes in general can be a bit slappy. It does have that slight feel to it. But one thing I noticed with it compared to the Pegasus and the Pegasus Plus was that Though these are all 10mm shoes, as a heel striker I sometimes get a bit of slap through when I'm running in a 10mm shoe, kind of slapping down onto the forefoot. You get a little bit less of that at the Pegasus Premium because of the high stack of foams that kind of compress together. It almost feels like a slightly lower drop shoe, and you kind of get moved through a bit more smoothly onto that forefoot. One thing I definitely noticed with the shoe is it feels quite narrow around the midfoot of the shoe. So for a really high stack shoe like this, with a lot of brands, you'll get quite a wide base on the bottom to make sure that they're stable, and it hasn't happened here with Nike. It's got quite a tapered midfoot on both sides, and your foot overhangs a little bit on the inside. Now, the air zoom unit does do, I think, quite a lot to help stabilize the shoe, but I definitely think if you are someone who uses a stability shoe or in general is a bit worried about it, you should probably steer clear of this shoe because there's a lot of foam there and it does roll a little bit inwards. Like, I'm a neutral runner and I didn't really notice it too much on the run, but I feel like when I'm looking at the cutaways of me running in the shoe and that kind of thing, it does feel like, yeah, that's quite a narrow midsole for such a high stack shoe. I do think stability might be a little bit of a concern for people in this shoe, again, because of that high stack and narrow midfoot. So of the two runs I did in the shoe, like I said, one was on quite fresh legs and one was on very heavy legs, and I definitely preferred the Pegasus Premium when I was a bit fresher. It feels like you can engage all those foams a bit more, run a bit more with purpose, get a bit more bounce back. And when I was on very heavy legs, tired legs after a lot of like hard workouts, I was using it as a recovery run shoe. It just felt a bit too much shoe. I wasn't turning over so well, and as someone who has quite a high cadence, I'm not the heaviest runner in the world, I wasn't really engaging all of those foams that well, and I was just kind of plodding along. So that might be a bit different if you are someone who puts a bit more force in. If you're a slightly heavier runner or someone who bounds a bit more, you might get a bit more engagement from all those foams at kind of any pace. But yeah, that on that run, it felt a bit more just like a big shoe. It's still fine, it seems to protect the legs pretty well, but it doesn't feel like a shoe that's built for flat out recovery like you might expect from a big high stack shoe like this with this weight. It feels more in the line of things like I guess the Puma Mag Max or even the Hoka Skyward X, like big, heavy, high stack shoes that are built to be quite versatile though still, like with lots of stuff in the midsole to try and help you bounce along. And if you're not getting all that bounce, which I really wasn't on that kind of recovery run, then it doesn't feel so good. But when I was, like I say, when I was in kind of a more of a classic daily training run and just moving along at a fairly relaxed pace, it did feel like I was getting a bit more spring back from the shoe. So very early verdict on the Pegasus Premium, mostly is that I'm not exactly sure where I stand on the shoe still. Like, it is an interesting shoe, it has got a bouncy ride, it's got a very interesting combination of foams, but it's a heavy shoe. It has that slight stability issue, I think, around the midfoot with that narrow design, but it was fun to run in, but I'm still not convinced it's the kind of shoe I would pick myself for any runs compared to the other Pegasus models, which probably suit my running style a little bit better as more lightweight shoes with kind of slightly more snappy design to them. But it's certainly an interesting shoe. It definitely has a little bit of the Ultra Boost vibe to it in that it's a very good looking shoe, an interesting looking shoe that you want to wear around as streetwear, but then you can also run in. I'll probably do a comparison of those shoes in time, but the Ultra Boost for a long time was very similarly heavy. It's now come down a bit in weight, but doesn't really have, I think, the same level of kind of bounce in it because it doesn't have such impressive foams in the midsole as you get on the Pegasus Premium. But again, two kind of similar shoes, cool shoes, can run in them as well, so will be of interest to sneakerheads as well as runners. But when this shoe was kind of initially announced, there was a little bit like, oh, is this going to be Nike's super trainer? You've got that big Air Zoom pod, you've got some Zoom X foam in there. Is this going to fill a gap in their lineup? But that's not really what I'm getting from the shoe myself. Like the Zoom Fly 6, which just recently came out, fills that gap. That's an excellent super trainer. I put in a lot of miles in that shoe over the last week and a half, and I'm really enjoying running it. The Pegasus Premium doesn't feel like a fast, versatile super trainer like that shoe, which compares to things like the Hoka Mach X2 or the Endorphin Speed 4. It doesn't really feel like the Asics Super Blast either, which is a plateless super trainer with the mega stack as well. The Pegasus Premium to me definitely feels more in line with shoes like the Puma Mag Max, the Hoka Skyward X, maybe even like the Brooks Glycerin Max, that are big mega stack shoes designed really to play more of a daily training role for people who maybe don't get on with those lower stack shoes and have a lot of bounce, have a lot of protection, do a good job for that and actually are quite versatile because of all the stuff in the midsole. But I think one thing that might count against it there is what I've been talking about, that midfoot stability, whereas you look at something like the Glycerin Max, it's very wide, Puma Mag Max is very wide, so is the Skyward X, because with a high stack, they want to give stability as well as all that cushioning underfoot, and that's not something Nike's gone for so much with the Pegasus Premium, which has more of the classic kind of Pegasus silhouette. It's certainly an interesting shoe, and one I liked running in those first two times. I've been looking forward to getting out and again, but it'll be interesting to see how it ends up being received elsewhere and how it ends up comparing to the Pegasus 41 and Pegasus Plus, which feel much more classic daily trainers that will work for lots more runners. The Pegasus Premium probably will have slightly more niche appeal, I think, in terms of the runners who enjoy it the most, and also then there's people who might look at it as a nice crossover lifestyle running shoe. That's our first look at the Nike Pegasus Premium. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.